Welcome to episode 4 of the YAHOWAH blog on coming home. This is Qowl, AVoice, and we're covering the third Mizmowr, our psalm. We should be able to conclude our review of this psalm in this, the fourth episode of Coming Home, Volume 1. And so with no further ado, I'd like to commence where we left off in our last program, because really so much was accomplished and so much was squandered by father and son. Well, they didn't were the ones that squandered it, but nonetheless, they accomplished a great deal that their people surely squandered, and it had to leave both Yahowah and Dowd dismayed. There will be accountability for all of those who have misled Yisrael into believing that a star represents David, that David is a king who is not returning, that God does not have a son or a named Messiah named David, that no one has fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. God was so clear in giving us these answers, as was Dowd. There has to be a consequence for hiding the truth from his people for so long. So the third Mizmowr continues with these words: "For indeed, you will strike, Naka. You will verbally abuse and cripple, battering, afflicting, and destroying accordingly all of those who are adverse to and opposed to me." Now, this is Dowd speaking to Yahowah. And I want to tell you, there are a lot of people that are overtly and passively opposed to Dowd, including those engaged in rabbinical Judaism, those, of course, who have promoted Christianity, and Muslims as well, even academics in secular humanism. Dowd has been questioned even as his authority over uniting and leading ancient Israel, and there really is no one who gives him credit for his third of three lives, where he came to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. He is not referred to as the Messiah. He is not referred to as the Son of God. He is not called the returning king. And there's an episode now playing in one of the pay-per-view companies. I don't know if it's Netflix or Amazon Prime, but on David. And they want to show him as the young boy that slew the giant of a man, bringing down the Philistine named Goliath, and who had his tryst with Jonathan and was haunted by his father, Jonathan's father, Shaul, the people's choice of king. And it does not depict him as a prophet, does not depict him as writing the Psalms, does not depict him as the man who was the chosen one, who was anointed 3 times at God's direction, who Yahowah said, "He is my son, I am his father." He's not depicted as the man who returned in his greatest achievements of all, which is to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, making the covenant possible for all of us. So there's lots of people who are adverse to none more so than Shaul, who became Paul, whom Yahowah calls the plague of death, in Shabat 666 years before Paul would write his first letter to the Galatians. And it is a fundamental fulcrum of Christianity to depict Dowd as dead and buried, because only if he is gone that it is even partially credible that the architects of Christianity, particularly Peter and Paul, could overtly rob Dowd of everything that God said about him. He is my son. He is the Messiah. He is the returning king. He is the chosen one. He is Elyon, as God, in my presence. All of these things were bequeathed to a misnomer and crude counterfeit in Christianity because God's people, the rabbis at the time, simply were too ignorant or self-absorbed to recognize that Dowd was fulfilling the very prophecies that he said he would. And so it is true that Dowd is eminently opposed in Christianity. And he is eminently opposed in Judaism because rather than acknowledge that God actually has a son, that the Messiah has been here twice and will return, it is an unknown, unnamed Messiah that they await. As Dowd is opposed at every turn. He is mocked horribly in Islam, where he's turned into a Muslim over some of the most absurd Talmud stories that one could possibly imagine. And so there is great hostility and rancor, crushing, shabar, smashing and shattering, breaking and separating the jawbone and the teeth of the unrighteous and the unjust. This is Mizmowr lyrics to be sung, Psalm 3:7. So putting it all together here, we said that we find that Dowd is acknowledging that his father, Yahowah, will strike and cripple those who are adverse and opposed to him, and that he will land a crushing and shattering blow upon the jawbone and the teeth of the unrighteous and unjust, those who are guilty, who are wicked, who are troubling and vexing. Mizmowr lyrics to be sung, Psalm 3:7. By the term that the jaw is the place that is going to be struck by Yahowah, it is the words that those who have opposed Dowd, who have failed to acknowledge his contributions, his accolades, his achievements, it is their words that Yahowah is going to strike down. And so there would be, and will be even in the future, battles to be fought which require Yahowah to defend his son and his people from foreign accusations and invasions, saving them from the many who have come to oppose them. And since Dowd is Yah's beloved son, God's chosen king, his anointed Messiah, the extended branch, the prophet extraordinaire, even the sacrificial lamb, those who speak out against him, who have tried to negate him, who are adversarial to him fulfilling all of these roles and embodying all of these accolades, are going to be crushed by God. That means that he's going to shatter the orifice from which their troubling and vexing diatribes have been spewed forth over the long march of time. And that means that those who advance the myth of replacement foolology, stealing what was given to Dowd and giving it to a misnomer, are in serious trouble, as will be those who advance rabbinical Judaism. Muslims for that reason, but of course many, many more, as they too have a false Messiah. So, while Dowd was far from perfect in his tumultuous life, there are times, such as the rape of his daughter and the revenge killing of his firstborn son and his lifelong response to Absalom, where he isn't particularly on his game. Sending a respected man into harm's way because he fancied his wife, or sending others on an errand because he preferred the taste of Bethlehem's water, were reprehensible acts, as was Dowd's choice when he was given three options by God to negate the ill effects of counting upon his people's prowess as soldiers. Even the best among us had some wrongs to right, and so we would. And it is in these very things, especially when set into the context of these Mizmowr Psalms and a Mashal Proverbs, which make Dowd perfect for the role he plays in our salvation. Dowd is like us, and yet he is declared right, Sadak, vindicated by Yahowah, becoming his Masiach, his Melech, his Nabi, and his Bakor, which should inspire all of us to investigate how this occurred. What was it that Dowd, the beloved, did that caused God to see this flawed individual such that he became his favorite, his enduring symbol of what he wants from the rest of us, especially Yisrael and Yehudah? Well, the answer is found in the very next line, and every word of every Mizmowr and Mashal that Dowd wrote. Consider this. The Messiah and Son of God encouraged us to approach Yahweh, to receive salvation. Yahshua, the deliverance and welfare, assistance and prosperity of your family, al-am atah, upon your people for your benefit. Bakara ata, for your opportunity and blessing, for your gift of prosperity, for a better circumstance and reconciliation of your relationship. Pause again for the third time now and consider this. Mizmowr lyrics to be sung, Psalm 3:8. Well, Dowd is the one who knows a lot about this because he's the one who made it possible. We have Dowd to thank for providing access to Yahweh. He opened the door to perfect our souls, removing our guilt, his, um, and that of his people, all of us. It really is that simple, and it's that beneficial. Israel, listen to him and come home. Yehudah, celebrate the return of your king. This is the way that we have been given the opportunity to approach Yahweh. We literally approach him by what Yahweh and Dowd accomplished by fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim. There's a doorway to life. It's Pesach. Dowd opened it. It's his blood that marks that doorway to Yahweh's home in eternity. And so that we could enter it and be in the presence of a perfect God. Dowd volunteered also to take our guilt, both religious and political, and to carry it into Sheol, this black hole of hell where nothing escapes, so it would never be seen again, such that we appear perfect before God, innocent. And this enabled him to become the ultimate example, the Bakor, the firstborn son of Bekurim, firstborn children. These three steps make it possible for us to be enriched and empowered by God. And they lead to the next harvest, to Shabuah, the upcoming feast, which makes it possible for God to bring us home, to take us from this world locked in decay and three dimensions as we are, into and past the fourth dimension of time, the fifth and sixth dimensions of energy, and which is repulsive, giving us choice, and of gravity, if you will, that is brings us together, pulls everything together. That is the stuff of relationships between things, such that we end up in the seventh dimension with Yahweh, liberated in time, perfect, energy-based beings, able to explore the entire universe. This is what our Messiah and King is offering us. This is how we walk to God. Pesach opens the door. Matzah presents the welcome mat where we're perfected. Bekurim anoints us as firstborn children of Yahweh, such that we are empowered and enriched tenfold on Shabuah, on our way to Towrah, which is Yom Teruah, the day of the herald, where there is the final gleaning of God's people, this ability for those who are mortal to become immortal, And on this day, those who are mortal and left behind are given the opportunity through the Adamah Parah to be cleansed and prepared for the great homecoming and the family reunion just 10 days hence on Yom Kippurim, where father and son return to Yisrael and usher in the final celebration of Sukkah, where we are invited back into the garden of great joy. This is the literal fulfillment of the final line of the third Mizmowr. Now, to view the whole thing in context, let's begin again. It is a Mizmowr of Dode. Yahowah, what is the extent and why the increasing number of my adversaries and troubles, and of me being confined and harassed? Sar, a great many rise up against me. Mizmowr 3:1. Indeed, Dode has been confined by Peter and Paul of Christianity so that they could rob him of these great treasures of his attributes and accolades and achievements. And he has been similarly robbed by Judaism and then by Islam and even by socialist secular humanists and their academic protestations regarding him. And Dode clearly knows the date that the great revolt against him will end. It is beginning to end now with these declarations, which is why I'm serving as the voice of God and the herald of Dode to bring this message to you. And it will all come to an end on Towrah and then Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, which is 2033, just 8.5 years from now. The preponderance of the people are saying, of my soul, la nefesh ani. There is no salvation for him or through him with God. Pause and consider this, Mizmowr 3:2. It's one of the great declarations in all of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. Dode is stating that he is the source of our salvation, but that most people are claiming that he is not. And that really is the nature of things. Dode is the one who fulfilled the means to approach God, to become immortal, to become perfected, to be adopted into his family, so that we can be gathered in from this troubled world of decay and corruption and brought to the perfect realm of Shamaim to live with our God as children in his family and inherit all that he has to give. This is only achieved through the collaboration between father and son, Yahowah and Dode. And even though Dode has pronounced that he decided to do this and that God agreed with him and supported this plan, and they worked together to achieve it in his second of 3 lives, arriving exactly as he said he would when he spoke to Daniel as Gabriel, God's most competent and courageous man, 600 years before it actually transpired, saying that he, as the Messiah, would be cut off from the living for this particular purpose. That nonetheless, God's people, particularly the culprits at this time, were Peter and Paul and Akiba, denied him all of these things, robbed him of it, robbed the people of them, offered them to counterfeits. One of the great travesties of human history, and the one that we are most committed to making right. We want you to know that there is salvation through Dode's soul, because it is Dode's nefesh soul that carried our religious and political guilt with him from Pesach through Matzah into Sheol, depositing it there never to be seen again. It's the greatest discovery in all of human history because it has the greatest benefit. You, Yahowah, are a shield around me and my source of deliverance, my manifestation of power and attribution of status, and the one rising my head first and foremost from the beginning. Mizmowr 3:3. Indeed, it would be Yahweh that would have to protect his son's nephesh soul as he entered Sheol. Otherwise, it would have crushed him. So it's very important for you to know what Yahweh did for Dowd. The only reason that Dowd was able to endure this and carry our guilt with him into Sheol is that Yahweh provided a shield around him. He was the source of not only protection, but also deliverance from the black hole that is Sheol. He was the power to escape what would otherwise be inescapable. And he now is the reason that Dowd has this marvelous manifestation of power and the greatest attribution of status of anyone who has ever lived. He is the firstborn of God. He is Elyon, God in God's presence. And Yahweh made the decision to raise him first and foremost, right from the beginning. This is central to God's plan. It's a shame that so many have missed it for so long. So here we read that Dowd said, I communicated audibly, calling out to and summoning Qowl, Ane, El, Kara. The essence of this story, Qowl is the voice calling out. Kara is the proclamation to be called out and invited into God's presence to meet and be welcomed by Yahweh. So I communicated audibly, calling out and summoning Yahweh, and he answered me. He responded, Annie, from his set apart mountain. Moriah, this is where Pesach was fulfilled. It's where the covenant was confirmed 2,000 years before that. It is where Yahweh will return 2,000 years, 40 Yobel from the time that Dowd fulfilled the promise of the Moed Mikre here on this mountain. It is that mountain that frames the issues of time. You see, 2,000 years after we were escorted out of the garden, it is on Moriah, the set-apart mountain of Yahweh, that those who served as the implement for the narrative of the covenant relationship, revealing to us its 5 terms and conditions and 5 benefits: Adam, Sarah, and Ishak, and in this case, father and son. Abraham and Ishak climbed Mount Moriah to perform the ultimate dress rehearsal for Pesach Passover, where Yahweh promised to provide the lamb. It was then 40 Yobel, or 2,000 years after that, on this very same mountain, on this very same day of the year, that Dowd, the actual Son of God, fulfilled that promise and served as the Passover lamb on Mount Moriah. He saw the connection. I saw it. And now we're sharing it with you. But that's not the end of the story. Because while 40 Yobel, 2,000 years from 1968 BCE, when Abraham and Yishak were on Mount Moriah, to the time that Dowd served as the Passover lamb on Mount Moriah. 40 Yobel from that date, 2,000 years from what now is year 4,000 Yah in 33 CE, is 2033. And that is when Dowd will return. That's why in Yeshayah 12, not Yeshayah, Zechariah 12, we hear Yahweh say that he will return accompanied by the one that we pierced. And you will weep for the firstborn, for all we have done to negate what he has sacrificed on our benefit. These are the great demarcations of time, because they're returning home to Mount Moriah. the set apart mountain. So we have considered this. So Dode said in the midst of this, and speaking of what he would achieve through his life, he says, I relaxed and I fell asleep, but I know that I will awake revived and productive. This is he's speaking of his second of 3 lives, because Yahweh sustains and supports me. Because it is Yahweh through whom, or through Dode, through Dode, that Yahweh was able to fulfill the promise that he had made. Father and son agreed to work together in this regard. Mizmowr 3:5. And therefore, Dode knows that as bad as it has been with his own people, denying his titles, his achievements, his contributions, that he will return, that he has been here twice before, and with the whole world turning against his people. Dode says, I will not revere them, I will not fear them, no matter how great the multitude of people who from all around have set themselves against me. And here, Dode isn't just speaking of his contributions in his first 2 of 3 lives, or his return as king. Dode represents Yisrael. He's the good and the bad of God's people. And as such, it is Yisrael that the whole world has turned against in the ultimate Sar of Jacob, time of Jacob's troubles. And as bad as it is now, we all know it's going to get much worse. I've shared how the events are going to play out over these next 8.5 years, and it's going to be very difficult for Israel. The horror of 10/7 of 23 is going to be played out again, but 1,000-fold. Carnage is going to be unbelievable. It's far worse than the Holocaust. And we know the timing of these events and how they will transpire. And so as the whole world now turns against God's people, Dode is saying, I'm mindful of it, but you need to know I'm paying attention to what you're doing, and I have no respect for it. And if Dode says he has no respect for those who have opposed him, Christians, Muslims, practitioners of Judaism, secular humanists today, you need to know you're in trouble, because Yahweh will protect his own. This goes on to say, your desire and my will is for you to take a stand, because it is my choice and your decision to encourage, support, and establish Yahweh. You want to liberate and deliver me, because it is your will to save me, causing me to victorious, becoming a savior like yourself, my God. This is the place where we really had the opportunity to do something marvelous, which is to explore why a verb like kum, to stand up, to take a stand, to support, to establish, to encourage, would be shaped by both first and second person volition, by the imperative and the cohortative, such that we know that Dode and Yahweh were of like mind. They had decided they would take this stand. The stand would be on Pesach and Matzah leading to Bikurim. It was their means to support one another and us, and to establish the covenant family. And all of this was because Yahweh had made the decision that from the very beginning, that he wanted to liberate and deliver Dode as the means to our salvation. He is the one who causes us to overcome, to be removed from harm's way. We learned that this was written in the Hiphil stem, where Dode becomes the understudy, if you will, for Yahweh, a secondary subject, the one who carries out Yahweh's will. And this is Yasha, which is the verb that speaks of salvation. It means that Yahweh decided, it was his will, that salvation would be brought to us through his beloved son, Dowd. For indeed, you will strike accordingly all of those who are adverse and who oppose me, crushing the jawbone and teeth of the unrighteous and unjust who mislead. This would be the religious, this would be the political, even in Israel. But of course, the outspoken political proponents of progressives who have become so anti-Semitic and so against God and his people, and against the Muslims who screaming Allahu Akbar to say Allah is greater than Yahowah, with a religion devoted to killing Jews, that Yahowah is going to, shut them up once and for all, and he will crush them. This is what a loving father does to those who oppress, victimize, rape, plunder, and commit acts of mass murder while terrorizing his children, and who depreciate and devalue his beloved son. You can count on Yahowah doing this. There are many prophecies that pertain to it. One of the things that I learned earlier today is the first time I've actually taken the time to really set the prophecy revealed in Yasha'ah 11, which was the one that speaks of the role of the Chodar, but to set it into the context of Yasha'ah 10. I've translated Yasha'ah 10 and then moved into Yasha'ah 11, but the revelations of the Chodar in Yasha'ah 11 were just so profound that you lose sight of where you had come from to get there. But when you go back and you realize what's written at the end of Yasha'ah 10, the Chodar plays a role in this very thing. He's the one being used to crush the jawbone and teeth, to strike those who are unjust, who are misleading, who are religious and political, and corrupting Israel and subjugating Israel, trying to perpetrate genocide against Jews. Because the Chodar isn't just a sucker off the fallen stump of Israel. It's not just a branch, a shoot, a stem off the main branch of the tree of lives representing Dowd, not just a stem from the tree of knowledge. You see, his primary role, as defined by God, is actually as an axe and a cudgel, a rod, to clear away all of the religious rubbish that has been grown through and enmeshed in the vine and the olive tree that represents Yisrael. He's going to prune it all away. He's going to shake some sense into the thoughtless and opinionated. And he's going to be the rod of divine punishment for those who have earned it. It's actually a much tougher role than we've ever given the Chodar credit for. And he is all of those things, particularly in the context of the narrative. This concludes with Approach Yahowah for the Yeshua, the salvation of your family, and for your benefit. Pause and consider the implications. Yes, indeed. Through the collaboration of father and son, Yahowah and Dowd, fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, we here approaching the Shabuah harvest have the opportunity to approach Yahowah. We have the opportunity to spend eternity with the Creator God of the universe, our souls delivered, our lives spared, our very nature woven into the framework of the family of God. These are the benefits of the covenant. These were delivered by Yahweh and Dode working together for our salvation. So we're going to pause and we're going to consider the profound insights derived from this marvelous Mizmowr song, the lyrics that Dode wrote to celebrate our salvation. I thank you for listening to this, the concluding episode on the third Mizmowr, as part of the fourth episode of Coming Home, Qowl of Voice. I am Yada, your host, Craig Winn.